Hello, I'm Neale Calvert. I live in Campbell River, British Columbia, which is on that big island off the west coast of Canada. I'm a poet, a writer, a sing-along leader, a photographic artist, and a healer. This presentation of poetry is about my wellness and about your wellness too, I hope. Thank you for being here. I'm planning to read 30 poems from my collection called This Mystic Seeking. I was accepted into the League of Canadian Poets in 2019, headquartered in Toronto. I've been published about 40 times in books and journals in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, India, and the United Kingdom. My book is called This Mystic Seeking. You might be wondering, what is a mystic? A mystic is someone who believes, or even more than believes, knows that we are more than observers in the universe, that we are participants in a communicative universe, and actually a benevolent universe that wants to communicate with us and does so, and many of my poems speak to this. I'm also a recovering Mennonite, and my poems also speak to this. My ancestors come from southern Russia and also from the Canadian prairies. That introduction, I'll say about poems. Sometimes they take years to develop. Sometimes they come instantly. One of the poems that came instantly said merely, "Poems, create them and celebrate them." And I want this hour to be a celebration of poetry. Another poem that came instantly, you might say a direct download, was the following one, which I called "We Weren't Expecting You." Oh, water baby, child of the inner ocean, be gentle with the world you see. It was not prepared for the likes of thee. Where do such poems come from? Leonard Cohen, the singer-songwriter, said, "If I knew where the good songs came from, I'd go there more often." I'm going to begin the poetry reading with a series on nature, 10 poems on nature, be followed by 4 poems on love, and then get into the more complex poems, developing further mystical experience. First poem is called "You Mountains There!" Exclamation mark. It was written in the Maple Ridge area east of Vancouver. You mountains there, high blue ridges stepped back into mists embracing the valley floor. Hear me, I am lost, empty, and always flying away to cloudland. You mountains there, brothers, embrace me. Under evening soft drifting ceiling, ground my migrant essence, evoke tears, any feeling. Hold me till I have to leave you, till I'm filled with your inexhaustible, earthbound eternity. Hold me till I have to leave you, till I'm filled with your inexhaustible, earthbound eternity. Next poem is called "Raining Glory," and this was written on Galiano Island, which is in the Gulf Islands between the BC mainland and Vancouver Island. Rain spattering the tin trailer roof overhead falls on my soul, taps on my door, says, "May I drop in on you, get to know you, wet you with transparent wisdom, wash something clear? Before I knocked, I journeyed that heaven you thirst after in the eyes of strangers. Bloom the desert spaces of your mind in me. Bloom the desert spaces of your mind in me." I lived in Vancouver City for 35 years, and that was just about enough. I started spending a lot of time in nature, and I really enjoyed getting out on the dusty back roads of southwestern British Columbia. This poem is called Back Road Bonanza. This particular road runs from Lillooet, BC, down along the Fraser River, the canyon, through the mountains to Lytton, where there's a 2-car cable ferry run by the local First Nations across the mighty Fraser River. You're just 2 feet off the river. Wonderful trip. Back Road Bonanza. When summer dust sings my car down Texas Creek Road, where parched Coast Range ranches hang high above a winding river, and a sign says, "Warning, road not maintained beyond this point." When hot dogs sizzle on my camp stove in 30-degree heat, 2 stock-still horses snub the scenery as rough 2-wheel track waits with dust-soaked patience, waits under rising spires of sapphire air, crying out, "In this church with no walls, this cathedral of silence, take Holy Communion, receive your sacraments." Then 20 years of traveling, seeking loneliness, melting solitude, stillness bigger than worry, the bliss of sun-drenched, smiling moments dissolve. Then at once ascending like an osprey and touching down, I claim an earth-sky El Dorado. El Dorado is a mythical city of gold. When I left Vancouver, I spent a year in Courtenay on Vancouver Island and 8 months in Gold River before finally settling, discovering Campbell River to be my home, and there's a poem on that coming up. This one is called River Love and was written after spending many days, many mornings walking along the Puntledge River in Courtenay. It's been published 3 times. River Love. After yearning for decades to say, "I love you" and mean it, today on my practiced water's edge path, I blurted, "I love you" to rushing river, pines, and sky, and booming back came the chorus, "We love you too," from hosts of spirit whose celebration echoed till I sat and sobbed in surrender. And when I was done, they asked, "Did you think this refreshing stream of existence would not receive your riverbank tears, though all of them together haven't altered its course an inch?" Effortlessly, our galloping galaxies of droplets absorb your longing, and in return, gladly love you we do, long as this river runs, and longer too. This next poem is called The Whole Forest. This was published in the book called Worth More Standing, Poets and Activists Pay Homage to Trees. It is a sacrilege in my mind for trees over 500 years old to be cut down. Editor of this book is Christine Lowther. It's an accomplished Canadian poet. The poem is called The Whole Forest. It was triggered by a visit in Vancouver to the University Endowment Lands Forest, where I decided for the first time in my life to get off the trail and merely sit. Interdependent and complete, it calls out as eddying air currents murmuring to rotting monoliths rising from the once nourishing earth they now slowly feed. Gnarly, brittle twigs breaking underfoot, an irreversible snap rustling dun-colored carpets of dried leaves. Rat-a-tatting red-crested woodpeckers lit by streaming sun rays feeding at tall, hole-scarred spars. Squirrels, chickadees chirruping from sky-soaked conifers bearing witness to the centuries' mists, high cloud, seething storms of snow, all existing and someday succumbing as one vast, cooperative, neither seeking nor shunning acceptance, neither criticizing nor puffing itself up, counting no successes, no failures, tallying neither years nor their seasons. This community, this teacher, whispering wordlessly, urgently, see how I live, see how I live. Next poem is titled Natural Monarchy. It was written in Vancouver and North Vancouver. In the city, caterwauling crows woke me almost every morning. The sounds of life, I tried to convince myself, but I could see how someone might want to shoot them. I moved closer to nature. Down from the telephone wires he flew to march across sun-warmed backyard grass, effortlessly, regally, a black-feathered potentate bent on his goal, water-filled hole in concrete meant for a clothes rack post. Down into the rainwater went the shiny black beak, out it came, and then, flawless, eons-old move, the handsome night-colored head lifted, and then for 3 long seconds, 3 flowing sacred seconds of natural monarchy, the liquid burbled down his throat. In those moments, he ruled the world, and I surrendered to a king. This next poem is titled Homage to Vancouver. I said I lived there for 35 years until it was time to leave. It was written in the Spanish Banks area on the west side of Vancouver, where you can walk out for half a mile into the water on the shallow sand banks. Freshly scalloped sandbanks squish underfoot, gray-white wing spread feathers, steady, motionless, windy rides just beyond arm's reach. Distant mountains shift morning blues to greens. Fish boats plowing the inlet outward bound catch early sun. And the silence and heaven's vast vault. Each under our mountain of weighty thoughts we wait. For the weekend, for a change of weather, for leaders with vision, with courage, for an end to endless, numb history. Then whispers that voice, seeming all voices in one. In this kingdom, mountains dance while ocean waves roar a foaming applause. And the numb past wanes, the long wait is over. Next poem is called Learning Humming. Hover, sip, scoot, hover, sip, scoot, hover, sip. Blossom by glowing blossom, heuristic hummer you pull, pink campion nectar in a garden. Next, aeronaut of ambrosia, pennyweight navigator of nuance, you burst upon billowing purple yellow pansies, arm's length beside me. Breath stops, mind stills, I'm ready now for teacher of trusts, even bolder tryst. Deck's rail respite, scant inches off, tiny back iridescing. Ah, educator of energetics, when you sit quietly so near, I start to hum. One of the benefits of living in Campbell River is that I have a giant backyard. It stretches 100 miles north and 100 miles west. Mountains, forests, rivers, ocean, and wild creatures. I like to celebrate the solstices, the shortest days, the longest nights of the year, and vice versa. This poem is called Solstice Ceremony. It was a trip to the north end of the island. Each stanza begins with a single word theme. Road trip. Black brother Bruin appearing, disappearing back into spring green understory. Twice, my bottom scraping Camry too low for mountain back roads, stopping me to celebrate untamed stillness, cedar smells, campsite. Birds singing, ringing brighter than church bells till dusk, sated in exuberant bird song. Hundreds of days passing before these lovely words re-emerge, sated in bird song. Have you, in quiet forests, heard Swainson's thrush trilling, thrilling? Evening, firewood years in the trunk singing itself down to embers, transforming old identities to night. Facing out of nowhere terror, sleeping wild, praying as if morning won't come unless I do. It did. 6 a.m., shortest night long over, driving to town for unnatural breakfast. Why not? Vacationing from judging mind too. Return trip, a light-filled visionary voice suddenly proclaiming, you're a very good poet. Get ready for a very good poetic summer. Outcome. Late life career shift seems centuries, not years, arriving. Liberated at last to live a creative, connected, contributory path, feet on this earth, freely announcing to tall conifers second nightfall, this is it and I'm satisfied. This last of the nature poems is called Trajectories, and this is the poem mentions the Campbell River. I was born in Vancouver. I couldn't seem to leave the place. Like I say, it took 35 years, but I made it. First to final town, Vancouver, Surrey, Sarnia, London, Toronto, Vancouver, Victoria, Vancouver, Fort Langley, Courtenay, Gold River, camper on the road seeking hometown, Campbell River. A singular, random seeming route, but somehow nowhere to somewhere. Home feeling at last, eagle, elk, orca, owl, salmon, songbird, kingfisher, cougar, bear, raven, river, lake, peak, profusion of tree and star, wildness and kinship, whose continuance with the sparrow by the silent woods I sing. Home feeling with one's talents, just right, just right. Celebrating each win, saluting Milky Way's flawless drift, Earth's stagger and spin, this wobbling wandering to one's own spot on a pale blue dot. Shifting now to love poems, of which I have 4. This one was written for a woman named Marin, who I met in 1986, early in my healing journey. And Marin was the first high energy person I spent time with, and she had a lot of energy, and sometimes it was a little out of control at first, but that's what triggered the writing of this poem. She was a music teacher at piano, and she started sing-along evenings in her home, which I began attending. I knew 3 songs at the beginning, and after 10 years I could play 133 songs or more, and then I put out my own songbook and started my own sing-along evenings. One of the most satisfying things I could imagine doing. The poem is called If My Hands ... for Marin. If my hands were the wings of a powerful angel, I'd have brushed against that place high in the center of your back the very moment your mind a mile ahead of your body, you prepared to thread through 4 lanes of rush hour traffic. My well-timed touch would have recharged you, foot soles to forehead, restored links with unseen winking stars, returned rightful cosmic stance. If my hands were the hands of a musician, I'd be conducting symphonies I'd written in your honor, and with a magician's wave be changing your mind's unresolved pain into gladness. If my mind were the mind of God, I'd be seeing you, mind and body, as light and love. Into every atom, I'd be inviting those charmed particles that keep a gazillion electrons whirring, bringing you moment to moment charmed consciousness. This next poem was written about my high school sweetheart. It's called Circling. It's been published 3 times. If with tender heart I waken in a start to that unfinished first love of my youth, and if the moment I recall of hesitation when 2 lips first knowing destination sent 2 souls resounding with the celebration of it all, and if those years of awkwardness, of incompleted passion, fears of independence manifest as tears that flow from dreaming adolescent eyes, it's that at 35 I've come alive to agony and bliss, the drive of longing to be met. It's that I've come full circle to my youth, and in this month of May feel that same surge of years away to stand now where I stood then, feeling incomplete and tender once again. This poem is called Time's Trinity. That's time apostrophe S. Time's Trinity. Traumatized early, I knew little of forgiving till something big occurred for which I needed to forgive myself. Like Buddha in his self-depriving, scrawny years, I felt scant compassion outwardly before I woke to the cries of the wounded within me. Only after I met someone I loved who needed my patience was I rewarded with forbearance for my own growth's gradual temple. This poem was written about one of the great loves of my life. It's called The Day Words Didn't Fail Me. Sitting near you under summer green trees, gazing through tears into infinite eyes, I grasp timeless reality, all that I am and am not yet. I see for the first time the wounded inner man, and you see him too. But after the unveiling, after the awakening, peace arrives, and then those 3 syllables that sanctify my unskilled intimacies emerge to rejoin worlds, revive trust, repeat the resurrection, to restore the miracle I'd misplaced. It's actually a 5th love poem, recently added to the collection. This is a poem. Its title puts 2 words together we don't often hear together. Its title is Dental Joy. This poem mentions the great Indian saint Neem Karoli Baba, who was written about by the American spiritual teacher Ram Dass in a book called Miracle of Love, and whose teaching Ram Dass sought to bring into the world in more than one book. Dental joy. Needle goes deep, electric tools buzz, buzz, grind, grind away decay. Hand tools pack, pack holes. An hour in, he's still face up agape. At last, spinning polisher begins its task, but he's smiling, laughing inside now, relaxed because of the movie in his mind. Dentist and helper no longer tooth working, but diligently decorating a splendid birthday cake. It's festivity with best friends, torture gone topsy-turvy. Disliking this chair, he'd begun with prayer, invoking no somber spirit. Neem Karoli Baba, friend of Jesus, rascally miracle man of India, who sent white-coated divinities, caked with candlelight Christs. Will be done soon, dentist soothes. I'm not hurrying, he croaks back. Couldn't explain he was partying in cosmic love's highest vibrations. Could have stayed all night. And every visit to the dentist after that has been a celebration, and isn't that a wonderful thing to have happen? Continuing now with more complex poems. In 1997, there was an event called the Hale-Bopp Comet, and as you likely know, comets don't go speeding across the sky, they move slowly. Hale-Bopp had been across the northern skies of Vancouver for several weeks before I started, unbeknownst to me, shall we say. That's what this poem is about. Bopped, 1997. It won an award of merit in a New Zealand writing competition. Strolling Kitts Point's evening streets, stunned by a starry radiance low over North Shore peaks, I feel strange effects. As healers are taught, I ask, are you of the Christ consciousness? And echoing back arrives, I am the Christ consciousness. Washington State coastal ferry stopped mid-run, killed engines mid-ocean, travelers gaze silently at Hale-Bopp, rare two-tailed specter arcing our solar system, returning in just 2,380 years, inspiring where else meantime. Ancient Magi knew comets as heralds, harbingers of a new era, messengers from heaven, but we've tuned out nature's utterances nowadays. Oh, that a too busy world, thirsty for divine download, could heed this brief chat, suiciding Heaven's Gate cult members, mortally mistaking the message, could notice that times have changed, the paradigm has shifted from tribal, national to cosmic upon first blue-green Earth photos arriving from space, and that in the Aquarian age, each one a teacher now, such events can happen to anyone. You decide to walk around the block and some light-bringing, epoch-changing celestial ice ball decides it's time for a talk. We live in a coffee culture. Don't think that's a surprise to anyone. One day I'd had enough. I wrote this rant against coffee. It's called Against Coffee as the Holy Grail. This poem was triggered by a visit to a Starbucks in South Vancouver. It wasn't a big one, but I made the mistake of being there at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the lineup was double, triple to the door. And as I left the cash register, I saw a man with a cup in each hand. He was navigating his way out through the crowds, making sure he didn't spill a drop. And that was the beginning of this poem. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld says, "People walk down the street with these cups as if they've won an award." Here's the poem. Coffee stains the brain, strains the adrenals, kills the inner child who needs no stimulation, is no child, rather an indefatigable, energetic principle. We, so carefully transporting, sometimes in each hand, steaming, star-bucking chalices of ersatz, elixir of life, as if holding the grail itself, what lack are we medicating? What's missing when our omnipresent, affable pushers proudly proclaim on their chests, fueled by caffeine? Perhaps it's authentic life, powered not by stimulants, rather by a long-abandoned dream, finding God's goblet of grace. A dream still alive but drowning in a great flood. A dream of untold, manifold wealth we've convinced ourselves comes in 10-cent cardboard cups. I have several poems that were dreams translated into poetic words. This is one of them. It's called Turn Crosses into Art. As I mentioned, I'm a recovering Mennonite, student of religion and spirituality. Turn crosses into art. Some say turn swords into plowshares. I say turn crosses into artwork. Gather a few old ones, dismantle the heavy timbers, plane off the rough edges, the weathering of centuries, the grime and pain. Don't do the work yourself, you're weary from lugging them. In the electric age, dear Jesus, we give such jobs to machines. When fresh wood gleams, splashed with varnish, atop a swaying skyscraper, creatively arrange the beams just so and so and so, open to their home elements, wind, rain, sun. For the next 20 centuries, let this lumber carry a happier form. Almost any context can be a place for mystical experience. This is another one of them. This poem is called The Man Outside My Door. When at night my solitary rooms became still, I sensed lurking outside my dwelling's door a mysterious silent man. Sometimes I feared he would break in with a great smashing and splintering sound. For weeks I strained to hear thumps of approaching or leaving footsteps, especially after midnight when corridor lights streamed around my entry's edges into the murk. In daylight I puzzled this perilous male power. Who are you? I finally thought to challenge, and then startling facts began trickling in. I'm handsome with a ready smile. I'm healthy and walk with a confident step. The noiseless knocking had been announcing a shimmering shadow brother, man of light, who was everything that I, in dark, self-hating hours, thought that I was not. This next poem recalls a poetic moment that happened before I knew what a poetic moment was. I learned about it later, and then I wrote this poem. It's called Meditation on a Washing Line. On a country road, strung from a faded mobile home, wet sheets and towels glow orange, yellow, and white in spring sun, nourishing like a hot day's handful of cool well water. I'm tired of dried up ancient hierarchies, long-distance deities, capricious, irritable despot gods, humorless fundamentalist philosophies that fail to precipitate self-esteem, divinity without but not within. My true self, my deep soul, thirsts to be equals, celebrating moment by moment this radiant wash day ordinariness. with you. Part of my healing journey, I participated in vision quests. This was one that took place in the BC interior, an hour east of 100 Mile House, and that is very rural country. We had sweat lodges with Indigenous leaders. I led a singing evening. We did dream analysis sessions, and at the end there was to be, we had to cross a lake and then participate in a solo wilderness experience. The weather got rough, the lake was stormy, and rather than cancel, they decided to go ahead. This poem is called Star Traveling. Steam-filled sweat lodge, searing rituals to heal enslaved, indulgent mind parts, a firm purpose, protect evenings voyaging. Stormy lake crossing, waves crash, canoes bow, going under, prayer learned this hour. Safe harbor, 2 Buddhas in a boat, exhilarated, laughing, faced fear of dying, paddled resolutely, grew. Solo journey supplies, 1 sleeping bag, 1 mosquito net, 1 flattened plastic trash bag tent. Surveying, sniffing wilderness as a grizzly, growling, restores strength, defends territory. Interlude. Soft voice last night whispered, the only thing that will heal your back is your relationship with the universe. Silent, rough country darkness, gazing upward past clustering mosquitoes to stars. Suddenly, soul ascending, up, arriving at Great Bear, the Big Dipper, indigenous, protector of the night, then astonished, stepping star to star. It's a big place, rumbles the resident caretaker. Successful vision quest, home expanded, celestial edition. Drive home, friends, a sparkling mind. Southern slaves fleeing northward sang, stars in the heavens gonna show you the way, follow the drinking gourd. The drinking gourd is the Big Dipper. The 2 rightmost stars of the Big Dipper always point to the North Star. So it can be used as a guidance system, and that's what the slaves from the southern United States used to help guide them on their journey northward. There's one more piece of this poem, a quote from a book called Mystical Landscapes, from Van Gogh to Emily Carr. Many people know Vincent van Gogh had a famous painting called The Starry Night. Here's what they say in this book. Vincent van Gogh expressed the thought that the stars in the night sky might be like the cities marked on a map of France, and that in the afterlife the soul would be free to travel from star to star, as simply as in life one moves from one town to another by train. The book was published in 2017. Here's one of my longer poems, more complex. Its title is Cultivate Ordinariness. Begins with an epigraph, a quote. I studied some more psychology about 10 years ago. The professor had this sign on his door. It says, anxiety means you're on the edge of growth. I think what he meant is no use getting anxious about being anxious. I was the first person in my family to travel to Europe, and this was a trip of 7 weeks with as partner. She was already there, and I was to meet her there in Germany. Here is the poem. Vancouver International, first time to Europe, Big bright planes abound, one small, faded, oil-streaked Amsterdam junket soon jammed with chattering Dutch, where tinned Atlantic crossing sardines. Overloaded rent of flying wreck lumbers, rumbles, still learning acceleration, lifts offs the next challenge. It's up. 50 cheers greet separation's silence. He hadn't doubted alone, but the sudden hard tilt to head northeast creates panic. Hands seize armrests as mind screams it will fall. There's flames and a fireball after the ground shudders. A horror show, no exit, no one else is watching. You are not ordinary enough to die yet, informs a voice. Its source found to be not the plane's loudspeaker, but the center of his own head. Listen to me, a gyrating mind hears, because I am calmer than you. Listen. Recognition arrives. It's his Vancouver spiritual teacher, the one whose name first came in a dream. How did she get here? He asked himself, but he listens. Inside yourself, you feel special, above all others, and separate. In your mind, a conflagration like a plane crash or a catastrophic illness, death at a young age, is the necessary outcome of such a belief system. Your biggest and lifelong tasks are these: to become creative and to learn the opposite of that specialness, to become ordinary. Partner, friend, good neighbor, citizen, colleague. And after years of living a creative, connected life, you'll see that to die is an ordinary thing. Trajectorizing the tundra, leaping the North Atlantic, seat 7B's frightened occupant mentally mumbles, you are not ordinary enough to die yet, you are not ordinary enough to die yet, you are not ordinary enough to die yet. Hours later he stops, starts Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, finds each poem, the title celebrating ordinariness, quote, a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, unquote. Blessed calm has arrived, but now, strangely, hundreds of ghostly figures stand assembled near him, each crucial to this improbable trip. Bauxite miners, metal refiners, riveters, wing designers, midnight shift assemblers, tire molders, ticket takers, meal makers, fuel fillers, flight instructors, and all their fathers and mothers are here. Upkeep crews, oil refining engineers, power plant builders, endless administrators, their fathers and mothers, on, a circle of interdependence stretching to vast circumference. All life energies ever affecting this craft accompany it still, charging its purposive action he grasps in these uncommon moments. While nature as underwing air lifts, sunshine lights everything. A plane upstairs, its essence, unified earth and sky, shimmers as being itself, its indwellers soaring yet still, immersed in an animated, inextricably interconnected, unseen community. This big mind view pushes out panic. It's a place of grace that knows no falling fright. Big mind view knows that 500-mile-per-hour sardine cans 5 miles above Earth, closer to heaven, some say, can be classrooms wherein angst gets outgrown, though others sensed no peril, needed no victory today. Knows that at Amsterdam, breaking new ground, he emerges fearless, eyes shining, a radiance ready to be received. Said I would be speaking about my ancestry. This is the poem that covers that territory. It's called Poem Long in the Making, and that's like in about 250 years. This is an anaphoric poem, which means it has repeated lines. This was published in a journal both online and in print in Ontario. Begins with two epigraphs. One is the quote from C.G. Jung, my great teacher of analytical psychology. Recollections of the origins is a matter of life and death. The other epigraph is by Malidoma Some, the teacher of African tribal wisdom. If the ancestors are not healed, their sick energy will haunt the souls and psyche of those who are responsible for helping them. Just a reminder, this is a difficult poem, but it ends well. Only an empty heart remembers 60 years later that I heard at age 3, but only once, the mandolins and Dad's deep voice melding with his older brothers in Večerní zvon, those evening bells, a song of longing for the bountiful Mennonite homeland in Russia before war's chaos, a Holocaust came. Only a seeking heart finds on the internet in 2017 transit papers bearing my father's, his siblings, and their parents' names, declaring the refugees' arrival in Canada via Empress of France on July 17, 1923, an event never spoken of at home. Only a universal heart must have balanced the unsteady boy, fearing the raging father's next "thou shalt not" infected blow, a homegrown Holocaust, and somehow saves an angry teenage son seeking missing power, racing other teenage drivers full throttle in Dad's potent V8 Ford on suburban Surrey streets. Only a guiding heart at 20 provides prayed for relief in a position 3,000 miles away where thinking for myself can begin, where wizard of the psyche C.G. Jung, master of the unconscious mind, in a dream provides a diagnosis, promises a long and necessary journey into wholeness, uplifts the adult during decades of distance and dislike. Interlude. Do you not think that I love you? Whispers suddenly on an ordinary spring day at a big ferry terminal, a voice within, and that this love can be renewed in every moment. Unquote. Did one's forebears not hear that eternal voice too? End of interlude. Only a winged heart can fly on a shamanic journey to find the last happy ancestors, German great-grandparents who settled Russian farmland granted to Mennonite colonists the previous century by Empress Catherine II. Their son, who would prosper and then lose it all, is born on August 12, 1859, in a village where my father would spend the ages 5 to 10 among wars, marauders, and murderers, experiencing unthinkable things he would unconsciously pass on to his vulnerable youngest, which he had been too. Quote, "We put pillows in front of the windows to keep the bullets from flying in," went a rare family tale. Only an emotionally healed heart can trigger a spirit-to-spirit visit to a son by a father 3 years after his passing to say, "I'm sorry," then repeat the words another 20 minutes. Only an expanding heart, one that understands those who ignore their history are doomed to repeat it, can rewrite the old victim scripts and pen the poet great-grandson's epitaph. Write only this in stone. Over rage and revenge, over history's vagaries, peace won out, eternity emerged, the unconditional love of Christ triumphed. Only a fatherly heart can whisper meaningfully the day this poem is done, "You got it right." My seeking journey led me to yoga. The third yoga teacher was a good fit for me. And suddenly one day there was a guru showing up at the yoga class, and he had come from Europe, a Hindu yoga master, and there I was with a guru. This poem is called Why a Guru? Another anaphoric poem with repeated lines. Because you're spiritual-minded, suffered growing up among old world unmindful Christians. Because Jesus doesn't live in body while this master does, he's here now. Because first time in his presence at 40, you found my head is screwed on backwards, time to get it straight. Because years earlier you'd sat alone, unfocused in an Ontario bar, and a stranger had walked up, showed you a Hindu Om symbol standing for the sound of creation, asked if you knew it. Because you'd never surrendered to a power greater than inner victim or ego's endless, unconscious, childish desires. Because in Austrian Alps retreat, walking with followers, you'd bent down, touched his feet, surprising even yourself, and heard echoing back, ah, sound of the beginning of ego's end. Because sitting back straight 2 hours motionless in an ashram begins a vital task, befriending oneself via deep silence, meditation as vacation from self-negation. Because aimless drifting means one's eternal essence needs attention, and in a big presence, purposeful path might be discovered, dark fate become destiny. Because victory over hindrances is a life option, and he mirrors the obstacle-dissolving master hidden within. Because insoluble issues, lack of survival instincts would prove karmic, negative carryover from lives past, as would poetic gifts. Because one day when fear won't leave, 40 minutes rapid-fire mantra repetition while driving unmasks and drives out the most negative childhood demon, relights serenity's flame, Om Vishwadeepa Merigata Vasabharam Timir Baye Sabanasa. Because baffling suffering arises in any moment. Think Ram Dass's stroke, or refuses to end your own world's longest midlife crisis. Because discipleship means it's said God assumes 50% of your problems, the master 25%, leaving only 25%. Pretty good deal for some humans. Because during deepest despair, having lost a mate, a calming midnight message arrives, you're going to be all right. Because when you're through those 3 grieving months, grieving the end of childhood's thin marriage fantasies too, one day just walking up Holdham Avenue, heaven descends. Elation, ease, interconnection with everyone, everything, his visage shining everywhere, power and grace, changing a mind forever. Quote, you have the Christ light in your eyes, unquote, utters my now compassionate Mennonite mother in her 8th decade when next we meet. Oh, he was nothing like that long ago, fellow Jesus. A year later, I would discover someone who is spiritually awakened, a teacher, can uplift his disciples, can also be psychologically immature and causing problems for other people as well. And I had to leave. And now for something completely different. This poem is called What Floats My Boat, published in Toronto. When travel fears arise, I remind myself, boats are made to float, cars to cross earth, planes to soar skies, they're purpose-built. When fears of writing failure arise, I recall, I'm made to poetize, purpose-built. So, Hump my tires, please, 'cause poems float my boat and I'm cleared for takeoff. This next poem is another incident of mystical experiences coming out of nowhere. It's titled Unwakeable Sleeping Infant. It's published in Florida, in a journal called Recovering the Self. Unwakeable Sleeping Infant. What shall I name you, infant, swaddled, sleeping deep within, blissfully unaware of life, unwakeable? For your unspoken requirements, for decades I've strained to keep the raucous world away or shushed, denying my need for engagement. Unbidden, you appear as I'm gazing wonderingly out misty bus windows, rainy day trolley trip to pick up an infrequent paycheck. I want to shout, you've sabotaged my career, but this, our first meeting, seems pregnant, larger than anger. Home again, I ponder. Infant, how do we even begin to communicate? You asleep and me defended, drifting in life, not connecting. Who are you? Why do you not awaken? I am awakened, although sleeping. I am on a long journey, eternal in fact. Dialogue with the timeless is not the same as other conversations. It happens through thoughts. You see, we can interact. But what function do you serve? I carry sacredness from all traditions, times, religions, belief systems. Believe in me and you shall be saved. But how? You are in me. Exactly. Then it's been necessary for me to keep the world at a distance for decades? Yes, until you could develop a path of your own. I descend into sleep in hours of pure peace. This next poem was published in the United Kingdom in a journal called Amethyst Review. It's very grateful to be published in England. When I grew up, all poetry came from England. It was even before Canadian poetry had been discovered. This poem is called Last Day with My Dad. The day my father died, I struck my head hard against the cupboard above my laundry tubs that caught my crown as I straightened suddenly, though wash days had been mishap-free till then. Wake up and cheer up, a paternal voice had boomed. Through decades we'd barely spoken, though his lightless fundamentalist bellowing and bullying had long dissolved between doctors cutting his vagus nerve and his having found joy in Jesus. The day my father died, I sensed his soul high above, heading northwest, a line from his home to mine and beyond. Later, I contemplated our reconnection, the 40 miles to his farm, and there lay a stiff, silent form. And I didn't know whether to grieve or rejoice, being both sad and glad that last day with my dad. Two more poems to go. This one was also published in a magazine called Yawp in India, in the Assam Province of India, Y-A-W-P, exclamation mark. Where does that word come from? It comes from Walt Whitman in his famous poem, Song of Myself. There's a line near the end that goes, I sound my barbaric yawp over the roofs of the world, and that is what he indeed did. He spoke very loudly for the life of the soul, and it's an ode to individuality and originality, which is each of us, the soul's birthright. This poem was, this issue of Yawp was on the theme of odysseys, and this is my odyssey with automobiles. portrait of a young man driving a new Volvo 123 GT in 1967, etc. Begins with a line from the Eagles song, "Take It to the Limit." Put me on a highway and show me a sign. White flying flakes become white soft waves. Northern Michigan night route through the trees. Twin beams open a path. Darkened cars driver sensitizes to snow drifts. Two hands manage slipping wheels. AM radio broadcasts Tchaikovsky from New Orleans, 1,200 miles south. In Escanaba, snowflakes dance around a solitary orange-lit door behind which, still silent, he scarfs chicken and chips. In daylight, he slides. Deep ditch snow protects the Volvo from damage. The bulldozer-equipped farmer pulls him out, and a dangerous 3,000-mile westbound winterland wander to his religious childhood home proceeds. Quote, "My way or the highway," thundered the zealots of youth. Never a laugh. He'd choose the latter, the open road. Great Lakes snow fades. Dusk's uncertain light brings an 80 miles per hour swerve to the shoulder, careening the car around a mature moose. Wide open prairie night highway. Headlights illuminate his future, becoming motes of light half a mile away, introducing themselves to tiny red embers, twin tail lights speaking a similar tongue. At midnight, hurtling past, big rig driver blinks all his lights. Night travelers mute salute. Cumulus stallions prance above the horizon. Daylight on the prairies, still the prairies, then dissolve with a blink of bleary eyes. Dump truck cutting in, no roadside boulder. He dozes on empty straight sections, not on curves. Hasn't slept, hasn't heard of rest stops or cat naps. Companionship comes from fellow Volvo owners waving as they near. In Sarnia, he told Hendrika, "I love you, but the new Volvo comes first." Cars can be many things. To the seeker, they're sacred objects, sanctuary for exalted experience. In summer 2012, cruising the Nicola Valley in a van, transcendent travel moments befall him. Hypnotic hours behind the wheel produce precious seconds of staggering clarity, revealing two strangers, young indigenous couple who just sold him this Ford and himself to be acquainted in eternity, connected across all time and space, fellow citizens in a pulsating, cosmos-filling web, a conscious force field effortlessly, caringly, arranging their needed cash and his affordable holiday cocoon. Like a prop pushed on stage during a gargantuan Greek play, the Aerostar had arrived to serve the All One Life Road show's first act. Now he knew. Each instant alone in an automobile, accelerating, braking, ditched or dozing, aware, unaware, he'd been listening for this universal shout-out, this spiritual upgrade, this brave new idea. Every event, every relationship occurs against such a broad blacktop backdrop he saw, and all sufferings just propellant for an odyssey of awakening. And that perfect convertible he dreamt he's running eastward, top down forever into a summer's dawn, was here now. His vagabond snowy owl soul had, over decades, steered him homeward into the macrocosm, connecting to everyone on earth, reality beyond cheerless tribe. He'd refilled his reservoirs, lit up his mental wheels, towed away the tyrant gods, jump-started a new accord, ever more emending a defective driveline, took it to the limitless, learned to sing his own song. After the yoga master, I began to be interested in Buddhism. And one morning I awoke from a dream in which I was traveling to Perth, Western Australia, and it was a very happy dream. So I spent some time on the internet researching Perth, Western Australia. Came across something interesting. It's called the Buddhist Society of Western Australia, and I began studying its teachers online. Then this teacher appeared in my bedroom one morning with a new mantra, and things started to make more sense as I spent more time meditating. However, it's no quick fix. Anybody undertaking spiritual growth program will know. Here's what happened one day. This poem is titled, No Dilemma, Dalai Lama. On a turbulent Tuesday, unable to calm inner fears of dying, I think, today is the day I discover if spiritual practice truly works. Upon my breathing in, out silently 45 minutes, implausibly 4 meters away, his robed figure appears, declares, "You are one of us." Decades of longing for belonging passed away this day. I list 3 of the Dalai Lama's main teachings. Number 1, my religion is kindness. 2, if your compassion excludes yourself, it isn't complete. Number 3, emotional wellness is necessary for us humans to live together on earth. And now for my final poem. This is called Descent. This is another poem based on a dream. Bright white clusters of stars wheel clockwise around a center. I'm gazing, awestruck with others, engaging in skywalking. Now, which way down? Orienting one's feet begins the trip. Airs in easy temp, no special dress, chatting far off right. Self-opening chute or ripcord to pull, I wonder. Motion below, passing passenger jet, but danger thoughts dissolve. Wispy clouds grace blue. Before our plunge into English Bay, I see powerful boats launch, heading our way, as if fetching returning astronauts. Lucky us recovering space cadets, blown out of body by early hurts. Wise now about corporal life, souls heaven linked, we dream elegant homecomings, can shine star-like, lead others to light. Thank you for listening. It's been a privilege to speak with you, share my poetry. I'm going to put the link to the Van Morrison song, Into the Mystic, in the below this video. I wish you well. I hope you find a purposeful and meaningful life. Bye for now.